Our next guest on the Real Estate Pessimist podcast is Megan Ahern. And if there was anyone who could ever juggle sharp, flaming things, it's her. But you know what? In real estate, when we're doing this kind of stuff, occasionally you get burned. And she, like all of us who've been in it for more than a minute, have experienced this. She's open and honest and funny, and she shares how she's worked through what sounded like a bad project and turned into a horrible project, but she got through it. And we're going to take some really interesting side details into banking and how you can really take advantage of some resources there. Please join Christy Candle and me, Eric Stenbakken, on the Real Estate Pessimist podcast as we talk to and learn from Megan Ahern.
Welcome to the Real Estate Pessimist podcast, where we talk about the good, the bad, and the truth about real estate investing. I'm Christy Candle, one of your co-hosts. I'm a real estate developer, investor, and I teach locals how to become developers in their own backyard. And I'm joined today with my co-host, Eric Stenbakken.
Hey, I'm a real estate investor also, although trying to quit every day, right? But just keep coming back. Just keep coming back. A long term and a lot of short term. And there is always something. And today we are joined by the perfect guest for our podcast, Megan Ahern. We were joking before we rolled this about how we keep trying to quit real estate, but we just keep coming back. Megan, where are you joining us from this morning? I know, but let's fill us in. Where are you?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm here in Lincoln, Nebraska. So it's starting to get cold here in November, but yeah, I'm here. That's where my businesses are.
Yes. And so I connected with Megan. Well, first I heard her podcast with Brandon Turner quite a while ago. I was like, okay, this is kind of awesome, people. I got to make sure I stay in touch and just kind of loosely over the distance. But then I reached out when she settled down in Lincoln, said, hey, that was my stomping grounds for many years. And I know the area. So I love it when she throws out the names of the small towns. She's like, nobody's heard of Waverly or Beatrice, which if you looked on a map, what you'd think is Beatrice, but nope, that's not how they roll there. So I love that. Megan, where are you right now? What are you doing? What's your, if I had to say Megan Ahern does blank in real estate, what would that be?
Yeah. So primarily we flip houses. So that's our main thing. So we flip about 30 to 40 houses a year. And then we also own rental properties, which is more of like a long-term wealth play and also a tax strategy to not be able to have to pay taxes on all of our flips. But we have about 40 units. And so we have some long-term rentals, mid-term rentals, sober living houses. And then I own a staging company. We stage about 80 to 100 houses a year here in Lincoln. And I'm a realtor. My husband and I are both realtors.
Right, I should mention, I should mention that she and Jeff are a team on this. They are very involved in this together. Celebrated 12 years married, which there's a backstory to all of that that's amazing. We may not get into all of that today, but there's another great podcast that does touch base with that later. So you're doing all these things right now. So and you mentioned that she's also a mom.
Yes, I have 3 kids.
She's got that going on and raising great kids and doing some cool stuff with them and boosting their entrepreneurial stuff. I love the story about your daughter going out and raising money by earning money, right? Just learning that stuff. That's fantastic. So when it all goes well and everything is like just smooth, what's that like? How does that like when things are really working? What kind of team do you have? How do things work when it's all going according to plan?
Yeah. I feel like I just go break things when things are all going according to plan, like try to level up and boost and grow. So it's always in flux in some way. But the team essentially is myself and my husband. And then we have a full-time, I call her my assistant because she just catches everything. But in all reality, she runs my entire staging company and she runs all my flip projects. So she does a whole lot, like I would almost call her like a project manager. And then we have a full-time virtual assistant, and that's pretty much the team. And so the VA is like a lot of admin, kind of behind the scenes stuff, everything on the computer. And then also our transaction coordinator, both for our personal properties and flips and our realtor business. So that's kind of the breakdown. And Jeff and I probably work like maybe 10 hours a week in our real estate businesses.
Okay. So what's the easiest part of your real estate business now that you've been working on it for a while? What have you got to where you feel like, okay, this is pretty well dialed in and it seems to be running smoothly?
Yeah, if we can just stick to like single family flips in the first time home buyer price point, like it's so easy, it's so systematized. I don't have to touch it. And even I would say that about the staging company. Like I literally do zero on the staging company. It just makes money. The flips are a little bit more like flips are just weird because there's so many of those like one-off things that happen that then Natasha needs to come to me and be like, okay, this is what's going on. But we do like a 1-3-1. So she brings me one problem. She'll also bring me 3 potential solutions for that. And then she'll also say like, which is the one solution that she would pick if it was her business or her house. And so usually I'm just confirming that for her. Or maybe I'm saying like, oh no, you're not seeing this certain way something works. She's not from a construction background. So maybe I would have some little bit additional insight. But for the most part, she's handling all those things. She's just running it by me if it's something complex.
Okay. How long have you worked with, well, you got 2 besides you and Jeff, your virtual assistant and your project manager?
Yeah. My project manager, we've been together for about 2.5 years. And our virtual assistant has been with us for about a year. And then she was at our previous broker for many years before that. And that brokerage kind of fell apart. And so she reached out to us with like, I know you guys are doing big volume. Can you keep me busy as a transaction coordinator? I was like, yeah, but I'm going to make you do all this other stuff too with our businesses. And she was totally fine with that. But both of those ladies are super, super high achievers. Like they can just grab something and learn it and do it well with like the spirit of excellence. And neither of them really knew like what they were doing. Like Natasha didn't do construction before. I hired her out of retail to run flips. Like that's just the weirdest thing, but she had the character. And so we hire on character, not necessarily on accolades.
Yeah.
I love that.
Because I believe that you can teach skills, specific skills. You can teach software. You can say, hey, here's the steps, through this. But teaching character and responsibility, wow, I think that's the work of a lifetime, kind of. That's not the work of a 6-month intensive as we dive into work. So I hire the same way. I appreciate that's a goal of yours. And that I would offer to people who are listening. It's like, there are people who that matters to them. Right. I know a lot of times it's like, oh, AI is just scanning through job applications. And it's like whoever tricks AI the best gets the work, or whoever's got the specific job experience. And sometimes that's true. But there are people out there who look for character, the ability to follow through, the ability to solve problems.
And I would say, I mean, we're a country built on small businesses and small business owners. And I think that that's what we're looking for in all of our different real estate funnels of things we have is it's, are you the right person? And if you're the right fit, then we should know the business enough to be able to teach you how to do it. And then you just freaking run and grow and scale, which clearly you've got your systems and processes dialed in if that's the way it's all set up, which is also music to my ears. I'm like, yay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So take us back.
If you can stay in like your own lane, sorry, I just jump around, but if you can stay in that one lane, it's so much easier to teach an employee how to do it. So like for us, if we're flipping small, like first time home buyer single families, she can do that like in her sleep. I can do that in my sleep because I don't have to do it. She does it, right? But like when I get out of my lane, then it becomes weird and we don't have a system for it and we don't have like strategy for it. And so that's when I have to step back into the business.
Right. And a spoiler alert, that always happens, right? It's just in life, it's just like we think it's like, oh, this is going to be just like the last one, just like the last. And sometimes it is, but sometimes it isn't. There's always a new thing. It's like, okay, we went to out of state to visit some of our properties, and the back wall of our refrigerator is cracked all over. Like, how does someone break the inside of a refrigerator? I don't know. Like, how do they do that? And yet, there it is. We were trying to fit the vegetable drawer in the bottom. And I'm like, why won't this fit? It's like, oh, because someone has torn out the tracks in the refrigerator where that drawer is supposed to go. And again, who does that? How does that happen? But guess what? It's a thing, and you just have to deal with it. It's like, well, okay, we've never been here before. Let's go. And so to have that, the diversity that you have, Megan, how did you get that? I mean, were you just kind of born juggling 9 flaming swords all at once, or did you kind of get into this a little bit at a time here?
Yeah, I'm definitely like a high capacity person, so I do kind of like juggling many flamed swords at a time. If I am not, I'm like bored. I'm like, what do I do with my hands? But we moved to Lincoln, Nebraska to do rental properties. So that was like the main focus at first. And so we started buying rentals. We were doing like the BRRRR method or trying to do the BRRRR method. And then we kind of got into like a cash crunch and we're like, okay, let's flip one. We're like, that's kind of fun too. And so it's always been this kind of like rental properties and flipping, rental properties and flipping. Right about the same time, Jeff got his realtor license because we're like, we need to get into these houses quickly. Like, we can't just be waiting for a realtor to fart around with it. And so he got his license, and then we could list our own flips. And so it just kind of added on. We started staging just for our own flips because there was kind of like a gap in that market. And then I started doing it for Jeff's listings, and then started staging for other flippers and other realtors. And so it kind of grew organically, but all at the same time, it felt like.
No, that's cool. So you're getting into this and you get to Lincoln and you're like, okay, so we're buying this and we're buying that, we're flipping these other things. And you came across a property and it's got 7 units here. And you're like, wow. What were you thinking when you first saw the sevenplex?
Yeah, I was probably thinking I was pretty bored and flipping is like no fun anymore. It just seemed like the thing to do. Like, you go to so many of these masterminds and people are like, oh, I'm syndicating, oh, I'm doing multifamily, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And it just felt like the natural progression to go like, I've been doing single families and duplexes for years. Like, we had probably done 80 deals or something by that point. So we weren't new to it by any means. And I thought, oh, I could do this sevenplex. It's pretty much just like the same times 7, it's fine. And seemed like a good deal. We walked through it. Didn't do any inspections. I was super overwhelmed by the time we got through all 7 units. And so I was kind of just looking around going like, everything needs to be redone on all of these units. And so I wasn't really detailed on like, what the heck am I even looking at here? So that bit me in the butt. I should have done inspections on my first like multifamily like that. I would have backed out, but I didn't. So we decided to buy it. We got it under contract. And then like right before we closed on it, I was like, this is a terrible idea. Like, I absolutely should not be buying this. This is a bad deal, and was kind of freaking out. And so I went back to the wholesaler who was trying to wholesale it to me and was like, I'm backing out. I'm not doing this. Like, I can't do this. And he's like, well, what number would make it worth it to you? So I had it under contract for 550, and I was like, 420 for 7 units. It's got to be a good deal at that point. And he's like, okay, let me talk to the seller. And then he came back and he's like, okay, we'll do 420. And I'm like, I don't actually want it for 420. Like, you made me pick a number, but I just feel like I have like integrity in my business, like silly me. And so I felt like since I threw that number out, I had to close on it. And so I did. We bought it. We ended up buying it. The plan was that
so I'm going to pause right here.
Okay, go.
What did you see on the other side of this?
Hey, can we talk business for a second? If you've been flipping houses or running short-term rentals, you already know how to hustle. You know how to spot opportunity, add value, and make a property work harder. But if we're being honest, flipping gets exhausting, and short-term rentals are definitely not passive. So what's next? For a lot of people I work with, the answer is real estate development. I'm talking about turning a vacant lot into a quadplex, or bringing a rundown building back to life as a mixed-use space. I'm Christy Candle, and I've been a real estate developer my entire career, and now I host the Local Real Estate Developer podcast to help locals like you do the same. We pull back the curtain and show you what it takes to go from flipper or host to local developer. If you're ready to build something bigger, this podcast is for you. Check out the Local Real Estate Developer podcast on all platforms.
Okay, you thought, okay, if this is all done, everything like this, at 420, it's got to be good, because what I envision as the finish line, it looks like, what did that look like in your mind?
Like numbers wise?
Yeah. And was this the thing you were going to flip and hold, rehab and hold, or was this the thing you were going to rehab and sell?
I was going to rehab and hold it. So I thought that we would buy it for, originally the numbers were like 550 and put in 250 and be like 950 kind of value. Okay. And so it kind of worked, but then I was like, man, just so much can go wrong. And it was such crappy tenants and units. And so I got a little cold feet. And then so when it came down to 420, I was like, okay, like I can make that make sense. And so we closed on it. We bought it with like a small local bank loan that did 90% of the purchase and what I thought would be 100% of the rehab, and then got the 10% down from my dad at like 10% interest or something. And I thought I could go through all of these units within about a year and then refi and get my dad's cash back out of it and keep the property was kind of the thought. But it ended up being, instead of a $250,000 rehab, like a $550,000 rehab. And so It was essentially like 3 buildings on one lot, like 2 triplexes and a single family on one lot. And so day one, I thought, okay, I'm going to just go through one triplex and do the first building first and kind of do this in phases, right? The other 4 units will keep paying rent and we'll just kind of systematically work through these. So we give the first building tenants 30 days notice to vacate. And just day one, we should have waited to see who paid rent and who didn't, but we didn't. So gave them 30 days notice and nobody paid rent on the first. Having to evict all 7 tenants over like a 6-month process. And we were like trying to do cash for keys. We're trying to like pay to help them move, all these different things. But like they were the trashiest folks ever. Like some of them didn't have power. Apparently the sewers were like backing up. So there's like literally just poo piles in the bathrooms and like just absolute chaos. They started to like steal the AC units. They broke every single window in the property. We boarded up the windows. So then they started breaking in like through the siding, like literally through the wall of the building. And just like everything that could have gone wrong with this property went. So we finally get them out after 6 months and start doing the whole project. But it was just such a bigger project than I originally kind of realized. Yeah, it's just one thing after the other.
One thing after, yeah. And I watched a lot of this unfold on Megan's Instagram, and it was, if I recall, you referred to this lovingly as the sevenplex from hell.
Sevenplex from hell update. Yeah, I think I said that 100 times on my Instagram.
Yeah, which by the way is the Tatty Investor, yes, on Instagram.
Yes. Yep.
The Tatty Investor. And if you're not watching, it's hard to see. She's got long hair, but she's got a few tattoos, and so she's running with that with her Instagram handle. And if you want to look back on that, there's a lot going on, and it wasn't just the getting people out stuff. Then the real phase work
started.
of like
yeah.
the work, right? So take us into what you thought was going to be the case, and then what actually happened. Because from going from 250 as a renovation to 550, there's a lot more that went down in that time. And I saw some of the pictures, but take us through that. What actually happened?
Yeah. So once we got everyone out, we had to kind of assess like, what were we doing first and how are we going to roll out this construction? And so we decided to do the single family and one of the triplexes first and get at least those 4 units done. With the triplex we picked was the easier of the 2. So once we got in there and like everybody's stuff was out of the way, we could realize that clearly one of those buildings, one of the triplexes had been built like around 1950s kind of feel. And then one of them was built more like 1950s. And so the 1950s one seemed like a little bit less hard of a lift. And so we started that one and the single family. And that took us some time, but it was fairly straightforward construction wise. But we had to do like everything, like windows, bathrooms, whatever. We added washer and dryer in them. We made them really nice. So like my thing is my whole portfolio is just as good as any of my flips. Like same kind of finishes, same kind of like stuff, right? So I want it to be very tenant proof and I want it to be really like cute and updated. So we fully brought those up to be amazing, but on all of the buildings, like we had to do, 7 HVACs and all of the window, all like everything's just so freaking expensive. And we weren't fully considering doing all of the HVACs originally. We thought that some of them would just be like, well, if it was older but working, we would just leave it. And that wasn't the case once we actually got in there because, like I said, the tenants had stolen all of the ACs. Some of the buildings didn't have ACs to begin with, so we're going to add ACs and all that. But anyway, so we get the first 4 units done. We move in tenants. By that point, we're just about out of the rehab line of credit. So I start realizing like we're about to be out of money. We're about to be out of time too, because we're bumping up on that year that the loan was supposed to be like a bridge loan for 1 year. And so I'm like, shoot, what are we going to do? And I decided to do midterm rentals on 3 of the 4 of those units because I thought like, oh, you increase the NOI, which increases the value of small multifamilies. That's how it works. Doesn't actually work like that, folks.
We heard that on a podcast. That's pretty easy.
Hello. I read this somewhere. This should be totally how it works with a 7plex in Lincoln, Nebraska. It doesn't. Anyway, so I'm like, I have a great idea. I'll do that. And then, so we did that, which is in the long run what saved us because it actually is able to push our cash flows like really high off of those midterm rentals. So I love that strategy now. And that was the first time I had done that strategy. But we put a midterm rental guest in 3, we put long-term tenant in 1, and immediately, like within 1 day, a tenant calls and is like, the bathtub is backing up with sewage. Okay, let me get somebody over there. So we try to like get that cleared. We can't, so we end up pulling all 3 in that building. We pull them, put them in hotel rooms, and then emergency style get a sewer line done like the next day, then get them all back into the building. And then the next day, the sewer line backed up again. And I'm like, you plumbers are so dumb. Like, how is it possible? I literally just paid ungodly amounts of money for emergency sewer line. How is this possible? They replaced a different sewer line on that property, which was also bad. But that building had 3 different sewer lines, 1 for each unit. And so they all needed to be replaced. And also the single family unit needed to be replaced. And also the sewer line from the other building needed to be replaced.
And are we talking from the buildings to the street or?
To the back alley. So like 100 feet or something. Like it's like a pretty big property. Yeah. And the water main that ended up needing to be replaced as well. Like from our tap to the front building. So yeah,
I'm only smiling and laughing because you just brought up 2 very painful properties. And yes, when water mains and sewer, they're not cheap, especially sewer, because you're dealing with actual crap and everyone's going to charge you a premium.
Yeah. And it was like winter and it was like, you're trying to get done like emergency style. Like, no, I need it literally today because I have these tenants, these bougie like midterm tenants that I just moved in here. And they're like whining at me. And I'm like, I'm really trying, guys. I'm seriously trying. But yeah, it was just nuts. And we ended up getting trees removed. That's another huge expense that was like a 0 on my line item, right? Like on my budget, sewer lines, 0. And then end up being like, Lord have mercy, I don't know, $40,000 or something of sewer lines. And then probably another $40,000 of tree removals, because it just was like the gutters would back up every time it rained because all these trees were just dropping stuff on the roofs, and like so many different trees. Like I think we took out maybe 10 trees and cut back like a big tree line. Yeah. And then from there, I don't know if you want me to jump into the rest of it here.
Go, because so as we're doing this, we're going to pause right at what you consider to be kind of like the low point, because I want to switch gears right there before we climb out of it. So continue with the story, because it doesn't end with the quote good business. But you're made some progress.
At that point, we had 4 units done. We got the sewer lines done. We have people in them, and I'm pretty much out of money and I'm out of time. So I went to our local bank and I told them, these are all the things that happened. This is what we've done. I'm out of money and I'm out of time. Do you want it back? Because that's where I was at. Like, I don't want this anymore. Do you want it back? And they're like, no, we don't want it back. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm in it to win it, but I need more money and I need more time. So like, what can you do for me? So he ended up saying, okay, yeah, he'll play ball. They'll give me a whole nother year and they'll do another appraisal, because at that point I had the bigger rents, and see if we could get a higher valuation the second time around so we could get more money on the line of credit. When he did
and what part of you, when the bank said, oh, we're actually going to work with you because we don't want it back, was that relief, or was it like, oh crap, we're still in this? Or like, how were you split internally, like ready to be done?
Yeah, I was never intending to give it back, but I wanted him to tell me that he didn't want it either.
Smart.
And I just wanted him to know that like I have been working my butt off and have done whatever I can, and I'm trying to make this like a really great thing, even though it was a really crappy thing. And so like our business is just, I want to make like a big impact on Lincoln, Nebraska, and like make it a better place. And if that meant like taking something that should have been probably pushed down and making it wonderful, I want to do that in a big way. And so they know that's where I come from. They know that's my heart, and like flipping houses and everything. And so I think he just, I don't know, it was just like confirmation of he definitely didn't want it back. But I just wanted to put that on him to be like, I'm doing something that you wouldn't be willing to do. So,
and they know that you've already done so much that they're like, wait, you're going to finish it. We just have to give you a little bit more leeway to make it happen. So they definitely had belief in you.
Yeah.
I talk about that because the first time I heard about work with a local lender and somebody who's actually in the market, and ideally someone who could do a portfolio loan, I thought that just all sounds like a lot of hooey to me. Like, really, they're going to be your ally on this. I thought they were just cold-hearted and just going to do this stuff. But I've heard you talk about local banks and bankers before, and let's take a minute and talk about the value that is and how you built that relationship. Because this wasn't just some kind of you writing to Wells Fargo and saying, "Hey, could I have another year? Could I have some more money?" And them going, "Oh, it's Megan. Cool." That does not happen, people. Okay, that does not happen with those big banks. So take us through just briefly how you built that relationship with a bank, that profile of bank and banker, and how they knew that they could trust you with this, because they could have looked at it and said, well, let's not throw good money after bad, but that's not what happened. So how did you get to that point where you had built that trust?
Yeah. So I love small local banks. I'm a big fan, and I will always be kind of like, I call it dating bankers. And so I will fully like take them out to lunch. I want to know them. I want to know them as a human. I want them to know me as a human. And so for the last 5 years, I've really been intentional in that. And we've worked with a handful of different banks along the way. It's not necessarily just one relationship that goes really super deep, but the way that I do it is I oftentimes will ask the title companies which banks, local banks, small local banks, are giving out really great loans. So whatever that means to me. I want 0% down loans. So I wanted to know who were the banks that were financing 100% of the purchase and 100% of the rehab. And I would reach out to them and kind of start that relationship. And then the way that I do that is I start it via over the phone and have a conversation with them. What do you like to lend on? What do you not like to lend on? This is kind of what I'm doing. Is that something that you would want to participate in? And if they're like, yes, I say, okay, well, can we maybe get together? I want to be able to talk to you, get to know you a little bit more. And so I'll set up an appointment. And then once I have that appointment set, get off the phone with them and be like, I just want to send you a little bit more information. What's your email address? And I'll send them a resume. And so it'll have everything that they need bank-wise, like PFS, last 2 years of tax returns, all of those financial things, but also like a literal resume that has like a picture of Jeff and I and like our background and what we do and how many flips we do, and maybe like some links of different projects we've done so they can see our quality of work. I'll put a link to like a podcast that we've done so they can throw that on the way home. So they get to know me personally, and then we go out to lunch, have a chit chat, talk about them, talk about the bank. Like they're just real humans. So like they get fired up on what their bank does. And like a lot of times these are small local banks. Like it has one branch or a couple branches. It might be like it's that guy's grandpa that started the bank 50 years ago. And this is like a legacy thing for him. And he's so excited about that. So I'll just ask some questions about that and get to know him. But then when you have those situations where you're asking for 100% financing on flips, like they know who you are and they know that you do good work. Or when you're asking for help on a project like the sevenplex from hell, they're more willing to do that because they understand that you're trying. Like you're really trying. At least I was trying. But yeah.
And this, I just want to underline that when I first heard this kind of stuff, I thought that's just not real. But there's a banker that I worked with out of state. I would know his voice if he called right now. And he didn't even tell me who he was. I would know who it is. And those relationships, because this is relationship. Okay, they have to have numbers, and the numbers still have to make sense. It's a bank, it's money, that's their job, but they have to know who you are. Everything that she just said, go back and listen to that again, okay? Because all of that stuff matters. Christy's doing this right now with a different type of asset class and a different type of project, but that matters. It matters that the people that you're working with believe in you, know who you are, know what you're going to do, and that you have been ahead of the curve. See, the banker didn't have to call Megan and go like, hey, do you have a personal financial statement we could look at? Get any past projects? No, she's ahead of that. It's already on their desk. Like, oh, wow, she's done some podcasts. Oh, that's kind of cool. And they can listen to that stuff. And she becomes a real person in 3D. See, otherwise, you're just a two-dimensional person on paper. And when you have those relationships, it can make all the difference. Ran into that ourselves. We ended up with we had probably less than 3 weeks to close on one of the biggest purchases we ever did. We were in a previous bank had stiffed us. They kept changing terms. Like, oh, well, we want you to do this. Here's this thing that said, oh, well, we want you to put down less. And we're like, what? Why would they do that? Like, well, look at the change in interest that we pay them. Like it was going to be crippling. We're like, well, okay, we can't do that. And so we had to ditch them. And we were in less than 3 weeks from close, and we had to close. We knew this was going to happen. And we sat down with the banker we'd worked with before. He's like, oh, okay, well, has anything changed in your finances? No, not really. Like, all right, well, we got all your current stuff. So, yeah, I think we could do it just fine. Let's just sit down for closing. Think, what? I said, yeah, well, of course, we're going to pull your most recent credit report, but that's it. And literally, that was it. And we just like got a mobile notary and did the closing. And we're like, holy cow, that would not happen with a big bank that you see advertising on TV, a national thing.
Yeah. It's so different too, because like, even once you get into more creative deals, like they can get creative with you. Whereas like big banks or even like national DSCR loans or whatever, like those kind of lenders, national lenders, they're like, oh, we have our guidelines and like, this is just how we do it and blah, blah, blah. It's just like so rigid. If like you don't fit into that, then you're just not going to get the loan. That's right. Sorry. But like we bought a package. So that's our new thing, is buying single family house packages and just flipping them all. But when we first started into that, the banks were like, I don't know about this. And so I was able to go around to different banks that I've already dated, already started that relationship, and be like, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. How could we do it? Don't tell me like if you can or if you can't. Tell me how could that work? And so one bank was like, okay, well, you have 7 properties. What if we made a line of credit, 2 different lines of credit, and we'll put 3 on this one and 4 on this one. And then when you sell one, we get all the profits first. And then the second one, you get all the profits. And then the third one, we get all the profits. And like back and forth like that, so that we feel a little bit safer about this because we're taking our profits or like paying down that loan faster, that line of credit faster, still getting some profits in there too, to be able to like continue running all the rest of them. And so we did that and it worked out great. And then the second time we're like, hey, look at that. It worked out exactly the same. On that deal, I even sent him all of my numbers at the end, my P&Ls for those 7 properties, because I wanted to show him that I sold them for exactly what I said I would sell them for in the exact time frame that I said that I would sell them. And so he's like, oh, that totally worked. And the second time around, he's a lot less worried about it.
That's right. It sounds so foreign to somebody who sat down and applied for a loan, the type that you talked about that has to fit in a box because it's going to be sold on the secondary market, and they have to follow. You have to literally fit in the box. But if you're doing it with a local bank and they're making their own loan with their own money and they're carrying that loan themselves, you know what is approvable is anything they approve. Like that's how it works. If they take it to committee and that committee decides yes, or if you've got a relationship with a certain banker, I had one banker who goes, yeah, I don't even have to take this to committee up to X dollars. Like I could just write that myself. That actually happens. And it's kind of like kids on a playground who are like, okay, so let's make the rules for this. What if you did that and I did this? And they're like, no, I don't want to do that. But what about this? And you're like, when you all agree and you're like, okay, well, that's different. That's brand new, but works for me, works for you. Let's do it. That's an actual thing that just doesn't get enough airtime, I think. I am co-host of this podcast because education is my calling. That's also why I developed a course on short-term rentals. It's called STR in an Hour, and it's perfect for busy professionals. It's a lot of content packed into 1 hour. No fluff, no upsell. It's an overview of STRs from A to Z. Everything from how to choose a property to how to estimate income and expenses. It's literally the best and most content I could pack into 59 minutes. With over 4,000 nightly stays in my own STRs, I've learned important lessons, and I want to share them with you. Link with more information in the show notes.
And committee is like, oh, I got to take this to loan committee. It's Joe and Bob and Bill and Steve, and 2 of the 5.
It's the lunchroom is what it is.
The Aherns are good people, man. Did you listen to their podcast? It was great. Like they're gonna get it done. And like that's loan committee. It's like I feel like it should be more, official, but it's sure not when it's small.
And that's taking the curtain back and going, this is what this is. They're literally betting on you. They're betting on your track record, honestly, how much they like or don't like you, because they realize they're gonna be working with you.
Yeah. And they know the neighborhoods, right? So when you're coming in with an address, they've probably been by it or they can get by it. And they look at that and say, okay, I know, and I understand that. Where you're dealing with some other lenders, they have no idea. They don't know what that means. They don't know what the potential is. Okay, so let's go back to your story. You got, sounds like about 4 of the 7 done. It's happening, but then it gets just better, right? Everything is like, oh man, this one only needs agreeable grade. and some LVP and we're done.
Yeah, no, we got it reappraised and we got about 50 grand more, which was a bit disappointing because I felt like the NOI was so boosted from that MTRs that we should have gotten like all the money more, like tons of it. And we didn't. We got 50 grand, which wasn't enough to do anything with. But the biggest lesson I learned from that appraisal was like, if you're doing midterm rentals, they'll most likely take market rents to appraise the property. So, especially on smaller multifamilies like that. So they took market rents, which was like 950, which I knew that from these units, like with laundry and like bougied out, I could have got 1100 probably for them. But I almost got like a worse appraisal because I didn't just put those long-term tenants in there. So I got the 50 grand, was like, whatever, got the year extra to figure it out and had to keep plowing with the project. And so we demoed out those units and there was like a wood paneling type of a board on the walls. And I pulled it off thinking that we had probably drywall behind that. Little did I know, what we actually had inside the walls was almost no insulation. All of the plumbing was ran on the inside of the walls. It wasn't in the walls, it was like in the room, essentially. But it had almost no insulation in the walls and it had almost no framing in the walls. So it was framed on 2x4s horizontally with a vertical every 10 feet. And that every 10 feet was usually right next to a window. And they had like retrofitted too small of windows at some point and like window AC units and like leaked. And so that stud was also completely rotted out. So as soon as we pulled all that paneling off, I was like, oh my God, it's going to fall down at any moment. It was probably the paneling that was kind of holding it together like a house of cards. I was having all these nightmares like this is going to fall down, this is going to fall down. But, you know, it's windy in Nebraska. 100% this thing is going to get pushed down. The roof was framed up on 2x4s every 4 feet on center. And most of those 2x4s were cracked. And so it had these huge bows in the roof every 4 feet. So we ended up having to completely rebuild and reframe that entire property. It literally would have been cheaper to just push it down and do a new build. And then we would have had something cool at the end, but we don't. We just have this turd triplex that's been retrofitted like all over the place, but it's fine. But yeah, so it was so bad. Okay, so if you could picture walls going straight up, this is hard on a podcast because I'm doing hand motions that you guys can't see. It's fine. Walls should be fairly perpendicular to the floor, okay? But if your roof joists are garbage and then they snap, there's nothing to really hold it together. So the house of cards starts to bow out wider at the top because the weight of the roof, and then planted still at the bottom. And so we had these exterior walls that generally were like 6 inches out of plumb in some spots because they're just pushing out to the sides. So we try to like winching them back and trying to do all kinds of stuff to pull that together before we could frame it. But at the end of the day, we literally just had to frame the exterior walls, the true exterior walls, on an incredible angle, and then frame another wall right to the inside of it by like ripping down studs at an angle so that we could hang cabinets that weren't like completely cockeyed. If you're listening to this, you have no idea what I'm talking about. If you're watching my hands, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
This is where you jump onto YouTube and you look at this and you go, my gosh.
Yeah, check it out.
She's still an investor.
Or just look at my Instagram because I put it all on Instagram.
So this wasn't a matter of like, I've put in a kitchen before and the kitchen counters come in from the manufacturer and like, oh man, we're 1/2 inch off from the back of the kitchen to the front here. And so we need to kind of build out the drywall here. You're talking like major.
I'm talking from the floor to the ceiling being like 6 inches off. The whole windows you could tell were like canted. So then like we had to wrap them with drywall instead of doing trim. Like the whole thing was just a hot mess. But the problem was that in order to get my 4 tenants in, I felt like, okay, I need to at least get the outside looking like better because it was all boarded up windows. The siding was all ripped to heck. So I'm like, somebody's going to come in here, little midterm tenants, little traveling nurses, and think, oh my God, I'm staying at this ghetto apartment that has all these boarded up windows. So I swapped the windows and put curtains up on the inside and then swapped all the siding on it. So it looked just like a perfectly normal building from the outside. Then we started demoing everything. And that's when we realized like, shoot, okay, no, we have to actually rebuild this whole thing. Whereas if I would have just demoed it first, I probably would have just pushed it down and rebuilt.
I wondered how
on it, but I had this sunk cost fallacy of like, well, I've already done the windows and I've already done the siding, and like I think I'd already done the gutters too. And like the roof wasn't that bad, except for that when we reframed the entire roof and then pushed, like, so we're pushing those bows out of the roof, which cracked every single shingle on the roof. Then we had to re-roof it. And so, yeah, it was super fun. And then, obviously all new ducting, all new HVAC, all new plumbing, that new water main to that building, and then kitchens and flooring and drywall and all the things. And so bring it up to new build code at that point, right?
Right.
And where
there's some drama with
now
inspectors
in the whole process. Where would you say you're at right now?
I would say it's stabilized. This is kind of that turning point of the story, is that in order to get that finished, we had to pull all of our flip profits for that year practically into this project. And we ended up putting, another $300,000 of our own personal money from profits of flips, profits of realtor, everything, into finishing out that project to get it done. And then we ended up putting midterm rental tenants in 2 of those 3 buildings as well. And then during that time, I had started dating bankers and figuring out which one of the banks would allow me to pick my appraiser. And I also started figuring out which appraiser in town would view that midterm rentals as an increased kind of valuation. And so I found someone who would refi it for me, and he would allow me to choose the appraiser. And I found an appraiser that would look at that in a really good light. We ended up getting on that second appraisal. So we're always getting like right about 900,000. We ended up getting like 1.18 million on that second refi. So we were able to get some of our cash back out of it and pay off my dad. But we still have like probably a couple $100,000 of our cash into it. But it's stable, it's cash flowing, it's fine for right now.
You got it. Okay, so so we've talked a lot about paneling, drywall, 2x4s, sewers, things like that. And we can all say, okay, we can touch and feel that. But somewhere inside is the frustration, the like, how am I ever going to get out of this kind of a thing? Because not only is it like, oh, what's next, is one of the things that she mentioned, you might have, it'd be easy to miss, is that when you're working, at least in my experience, with a deal like this, and you get some money from a bank or you get banks involved with this, they're not going to put their money in when it's not done, or not much. That's why they gave you the 50,000. And they're like, okay, now it's your turn. You put in the money. And if there's any icing on the cake that needs to be done, we'll do that last part, because then we'll have a finished product. And you've got to come up with all of that money from somewhere. And it's a lot. And I know that sometimes from the outside, people look at real estate investors and go like, well, you made of money. I mean, it's all money, because they talk about how much equity they've got and how much all this stuff is. But there's, I think, not a realization that even if there is some wealth there, and that's an if, and I'm not calling Megan out on this, I'm just saying there's a lot of people who they are maxed out when it comes to the loans to value, and they don't actually really have a lot of equity in things. And so it may appear like, oh, I got a $10 million portfolio. Yeah. And you owe $9.5 million on that, right? And your last part, you're paying 12%, hard money. And so really, it's not what it sounds like. And so we had to go through a thing where we had to pull a lot of cash out of the air too. People are like, oh, you got equity, you got this other stuff. Yeah, that's like saying to somebody who lives on an iceberg, you got a lot of water. Well, yeah, you do, but it's not easy just to pull that out. Right? There's a lot involved in that. Mentally, where were you at on this? And I know you, from previous podcasts, you're a person of faith. And so you're dealing with all of this stuff that seems like the book of Job. You're like, okay, we got the outside done, and then we got the roof fixed. Oh no. In the process of fixing, the rafters, we cracked all the shingles, and it's just like one thing after the next. How did you stay nose above water? I'm not saying it didn't get up to your neck, or whatever. It's kind of like you're tipping your head back and you're just keeping your nose out of water. And it's a day by day thing. In my case, some days. But how did you do it? Where did you go for emotional, spiritual, like mental gas? Where did you get enough to keep going?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I am generally kind of one of those people where it's like, I'm either going to laugh or I'm going to cry, and I'll choose to laugh. And I think that was one reason I went to like Instagram and actually shared that what I was going through, because I could kind of laugh about it and be like, well, at least it's good content, and just kind of not take it super seriously. Like, I don't know, like we've had deals that go bad in the past. Like it's part of being a real estate investor. It's definitely part of being a flipper is like, I know that every year I'll lose money on the house that I list in September. It's just a weird thing in our market. And it just happens every time. I'm like, this is my September house. And so this was just like my 7 years in sevenplex from hell. And I just kind of was like, it is what it is. I have to like keep going. And a lot of times, especially newer investors, I think they get into a pickle. And so they decide to either back up or eject. And really the only way to get through it is like just to go all the way through it. Like you have to just keep plowing forward on it because like those flippers, little baby flippers, a lot of times they're like, okay, I'll just sell it and like take it and you do the project. But it's like you 100% you're going to lose money in that situation. But if you keep going and you can somehow figure out a way to finish it, then you might lose money, you might not. And so that was always my mentality of like, if I just keep going and get it done, I may lose money or I may not. And so the entire time I'm thinking, I'm probably upside down on it. But if I keep it for 5 years, I keep it for 10 years, like it's going to sound like a great deal. I just have to keep going and finish it. And then when we got that appraisal at the end, it was like, okay, well, we're not actually upside down on it. It's not the end of the world. We can start, paying off debt and things. But yeah, it's tough because even if you do have a lot of equity, like we're fairly new at this in all reality. Like if we've been buying all of our properties in the last 5 years, we don't have a ton of equity. We might be at 75% value on, or 75% loan to value on all of our stuff. So the only option then is to sell it to get that equity out because you can't really do a cash out refi to get any kind of real equity out of it. So it's like, there's a saying that says you can't buy groceries with equity. And a lot of us real estate investors are just incredibly cash poor, or we go through these periods of time where we are incredibly cash poor. And that's just part of the business. Like you have to be okay with that if you want to be a real estate investor, especially like a flipper or a developer or something. Like our cash conversion cycle is so long. Like to flip one house, we'll probably have our money out for 6 months at the minimum. If you're building, you'll probably have your cash out for a couple years. It's just part of it.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And thank you for being candid about that this is normal, right? Because you go through YouTube and here's a kid who's like 21 years old and he sits there in his sports car with a giant check. He's like, I just got this check for $120,000. And you think it's like, man, everybody else is killing it, right? Like every Friday they get another one of those checks. And how does that work? But then you start unpacking things and it's not at all what it seems to be. And
that kid doesn't tell you that he put $100,000 down in that deal and he got a check back for 120. So he made 20. He's got to pay $5,000 to the IRS. And so it's like, whoop-de-doo, guy, settle down, Right.
But, and he didn't tell you about the one that he closed for 100 and he had to pay 102 on that, minus all his expenses and all that other stuff. And that's just how that stuff happens. Right. And this is why we're saying, hey, this is a real thing. Who do you keep around you, Megan? There's the thing about your posse, choose your posse. Who keeps you focused and like, oh yes, that's right. Kind of like you check your compass once in a while. Who are those people? Not specifically names necessarily, but what kind of people do you look to have around you as an investor and investor mom, just a person who's trying to get things done? How do you look for the people that are going to be your circle?
Yeah. One is definitely my husband, and I feel like I'm big time like the gas and he's a little bit of the brakes. And so we can all feel a certain way about that at certain times, but I think that that's like so incredibly needed because he's been the one that's like, hey, syndicating is not our thing. Like you don't have to run after every shiny object you see. And I love that. And I call him my anchor because I might just like drift away otherwise, like just floating around on the breeze. But then I also like to have those relationships that are very high level, either business entrepreneurs or real estate entrepreneurs that I can kind of like dream and grow with and see like what's possible and be able to turn to them when things go terrible. It's incredibly helpful to me. Even those old bankers. Like I have this one guy, Kevin, and he's probably, I hope he doesn't listen to this and he's like, I'm 70, but I feel like he's 90. You know what I mean? Like he just seems so old to me and he's still there working at the bank, but he's been through so many cycles where I can only see, like, I remember 2008, like I had just graduated, but like I wasn't in real estate at that time. And so when bad things happen, I always will go to him because he's like my wise old counsel. Like when COVID happened, I'm like, bro, is this the crash? What do I do? Like, is everything going to go to poop? Do I keep flipping? He's like, no, this isn't it. Keep flipping. And so I was able to like gas it when other people were pulling back during COVID because I had that wise old counsel. So I like having those kind of people, and I like having the kind of people like, Brandon Turner, or even big flippers like Indoor Hawaii, so that when I have big problems, I can go to them and be like, hey, what did you do when this was your problem? Like, it's behind them, but they have that kind of industry knowledge of like, well, you could try this, you could try that. It's just super helpful to have those people around.
So
I couldn't agree with you more on that. And I want to double click real quick on having the older, wiser counsel. When I first got into development, I was always working with people 20, 30, 40 years older than me. And then also when one of my business partners on buying investment properties that we hold, he's 20 years older. And it is so nice to be able to go, oh, this might be the first time I'm seeing this, but it's not the first time they are. And just to watch their calm demeanor go, yeah, that's a curveball. That's a legit curveball. But here's maybe 3 different ways or avenues or somewhere you can go. And you go, okay, well, I'm a problem solver. I'm going to go figure it out. Now you told me it's not the end of the world. So cool, let's go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Megan, on that same question, of these people that you know who've been in it for a while, your circle of people, how many of those people that you know would you say have had some sort of just like real disaster? They have had the poo hit the fan for them. That's 10%.
Like
how many of those people who've been
literally 100%? I can't think of one person. You haven't been in it for very long if you haven't had some sort of issue.
There you go. And that is assurance to you if you're a listener and you're going through something bad, that it's your turn, right? And everyone who has been in it long enough has had their turn. And those who say they have never had their turn, they are probably not telling you the truth, right? It's just how that boils down to that, is that this is a thing that happens. And here we are. And Megan's going to get through this. She's got a lot of other things going on there to help balance this. There's a diversity of income, diversity of investment, diversity of sources, and that stuff comes in handy. Because if all your eggs were in the one basket and whatever's carrying that basket stumbles, it's like, wow, okay, that's rough. I'm glad that we don't own all of our properties in one market, because we've had some markets go badly. Would be a vast understatement, but this is just what happens. And I think Megan's is one of the more fun Instagram things out there because she tells it like it is. I highly recommend that you find her on Instagram. Where else can people reach out to you, find out about you? Because you're doing a lot of interesting and fun things, and I think have just a stellar attitude about it. You keeping it real because some days suck. Some days just they're not fun. And Megan doesn't sugarcoat it. Where can people follow, or is it mostly Instagram?
Yeah, I think that's probably the best place, Instagram. It's the Tatty Investor with underscores between the words. But yeah, that's probably the best way. Reach out. I still do all my DMs, so that's literally me talking, not a VA. So hit me up.
Awesome. Well, this is fantastic to have you on here, Megan. I've wanted to have you on the podcast for a long time, and I'm glad that we were able to do it. And I'm glad you're taking care of Lincoln. I love seeing the pictures like, oh yeah, I know that place. That's fantastic. Thanks so much
for having me.
For joining us. This is the Real Estate Pessimist Podcast, where we talk about the good, the bad, and the truth about real estate investing. Thank you for joining us. If you like this, you can share it with a friend. You can give us a review. And if you like what Megan was saying here, there's an excellent longer form podcast that Brandon Turner did with her on the Better Life podcast. There's a lot more kind of life story in that. And it was amazing, and I recommend that you give that a listen. We don't always end our podcast with recommending a different one, but this one's worth it. Megan's story and Jeff's, and she's got a lot more about Jeff in that one, because Jeff was on that podcast. And if you look at these things and you think all these people must be nice, you know what? If you want the whole package, you want to go through the whole deal, you listen to that story and then decide, are you really up for that? Because it's never as easy or glossy as it looks from the outside. They're real people. And Megan, thanks so much for joining us on the Real Estate Pessimist Podcast.
Yeah, thank you.